welcome to My Life in Football. And of course, we're back again for another episode. And I'm really pleased to say a good friend of mine is joining me. And of course, as we've seen recently, of course, he's back in the Southern League with the mighty Kettering. And so it's an absolute pleasure to welcome the living legend that he is, Mr. Andy Leese. How are you, sir?
I'm not bad, Dave. I thought you dropped that kind of description, but I'll take it while I still can. Yeah, I'm good, Dave. I'm good. I'm incredibly busy. I thought I'd be having a few weeks off and enjoying the sunshine, but I am busier than I've ever been in football management, I think.
I mean, so how did the Kettering job come about? I mean, we'll start there first, and then we'll go back to the beginning as we normally do. But I mean, how did that sort of come about?
Well, I mean, it's common knowledge I'd left Enfield at the end of April, kicking my heels for a couple of weeks, wondering what to do. I had spoken with 2 or 3 clubs about vacancies, one approaching me approaching another club, and there was nothing really happening. And I thought I was destined to have the first sort of break and summer off in non-league management for 25 years. But the Kettering job came up quite late in the day. And Dave, I'll be honest, I looked at it. I looked at the geography of it from where I'm based, the stature of the club, the fact that they kind of just got relegated, and I just thought there was a challenge or an opportunity there that I didn't want to not try and take. So, I put my credentials forward. I very quickly got invited to an interview. So contact on a Friday, interview on a Sunday. Enjoyed the interview. Wasn't sure whether it was going to fall my way or not. There were 3 or 4 other very good, candidates, as you'd expect with a vacancy like that. And by I think last Tuesday it was, it's about a week today, Dave, I got a phone call asking me if I wanted to come on board. So all very sudden, and it's been a complete whirlwind since then. I've had to, I can't begin to tell you you'd expect what I'm dealing with, but you know what I mean? It's just been an absolute whirlwind, Dave. So,
but it's a very famous saying, isn't it? You can't keep a good man down.
Well, yeah, Dave, I'm sure there must be some nasty questions coming because you've been too kind so far. But, but yeah, I feel I've got one more job, in me, Dave. There was a part of me that just felt like I needed a break. Last year was very intense. It was a very intense last 6 weeks at Enfield Town. Mind you, as was the season before when we did get into the playoffs and had some, relative success. But last season was particularly difficult. I think just forget what anybody else says. Whatever they say out of the club at Enfield, or board or otherwise, bad expectations. Just my own expectations. That where we were, top of the league in February, and still in and amongst the winning, trying to win it in March, and to tail off like we did, drained a lot out of me. Very, 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 very disappointing. And I did honestly think, Dave, I was just going to take some time out, and I say for the first time in a long time. But I don't know. All managers will tell you it's a bug, it's a drug, it's an addiction, whatever it is. It's in you. It's in your blood. And I don't know any different. And I still felt, after a bit of reflection, a period of reflection, and still felt that I wanted to do it, and that I got another job in me, Dave. And what better place to do it than or to try and do it at Kettering,
Absolutely. Well, let's go back to the beginning. We'll come back to Kettering at the end, but I mean, let's go right back to the beginning. Where did the young Andy Leese first put his first, steps into football?
How young, Dave? We took right back to the beginning.
Yeah, right back to the beginning. How did you first get involved in football in the first place? How did you get involved with that drug?
I guess an avid football follower, I guess. As a young boy, watching the game, I'm talking when you're like 5, 6 years of age, late 60s for me, that was 1960s, I should add. you know, my dad, he was in the police force. He'd be on duty at Stoke City. So when the weekends, when he wasn't working, we'd go there. He'd take me and my brother. That's my earliest memory of watching. But by the same token, Port Vale, as you know, are the other club in Stoke-on-Trent. And my granddad's on both my grandparents and grandfathers on the alternate weekends didn't go. So it would take you to watch Port Vale. Now you wouldn't do that these days with the rivalry between the two clubs. But back in the day, Stoke were in the old First Division and Port Vale had been the old Fourth Division. So I have fantastic memories of going and watching lots of football, and that's what, you know, that inevitably that's what grabs you and gets your interest, you know. And I ended up following Stoke. I was, you know, fascinated by them at the time. They had a fantastic side in that sort of year, 1970 to 1974. You know, when they won the League Cup as well in '72. But the team with Gordon Banks and Jimmy Greenough, and then when they went off on and signed the likes of Alan Hudson and Jeff Salmons, but Peter Dobin, George Easton, Denny Smith, Mickey Pedgie, had a fantastic side, and I just, you know, had a real affinity with them, as did my brother, you know. As to playing, I think we probably got serious when we moved areas within Stoke-on-Trent, moved south, and I suppose we'd be about 8 or 9. Me and my brother, and we started to play at school. And then we had something in Staffordshire called Lads and Dads, Sunday sort of football for kids, as it was known then. And yeah, I remember starting playing there. My parents would inevitably be working at weekends, so I used to jump on my push bike and cycle quite what I consider now, Dave, quite a way to my uncle's house, leave my bike there and go and play in this Lads and Dads. I remember my dad fixing me up with one of the better teams there on a Sunday. And I guess that's where that and the school team at sort of, I suppose, 8, 9, 10 years of age when it really started. And progressed all through school years then, Dave. You know, you go to the secondary school, you know, to the high school, and you know, be playing in the school team there. I'm pretty sure from memory that I know I had sort of city schoolboy honours and then county honours as I got a bit older, when I got sort of 16 to 18. So yeah, and I in that time, Dave, my dad was I guess as he got promoted in the police force, his weekends must have gotten easier, and he must have had time. He started to referee, and he went up the ranks quite quickly, and he started refereeing Sunday football, and he used to go with him. So I remember many a weekend on the open fields at a place called Mere Aerodrome, which was as drab as it sounds and as remote as it sounds. And I could have been more than 12, 13, 14, 15. He used to throw me the flag. And I used to go and run the line while he was refereeing on a Sunday. But I'd got the urge to play. And very quickly with my brother, I think even at 15, 16-year-olds, we were involved with a decent Sunday team, you know. So they're my earliest kind of memories. But everything was really about football, you know, and driven by my dad, I guess. You know, we were very fortunate as a result of him, I guess, walking the track, as they called it, at the Stoke ground. He got very friendly with a couple of players. We always seemed to end up with tickets for all the big games that they had in that spell, Dave. You know, if you look back at the history of the League Cup semi-finals, they had the FA Cup semi-finals, and lost to Arsenal. So yeah, we had great memories, but that was a real formative period, I guess, for me, from 6, 7 years of age up to probably 15. You know, where you're watching, you're involved in it, you're around it, and you're playing. You know.
I mean, did you when you sort of left school though? I mean, was it still sort of football at the weekends, or was it a sort of a bit of a
yeah? Well, I went. I left my secondary school and went on to the local sixth form college, and there's a bit of a story there, Dave. I was in Stoke last week for a couple of days, and I was staying in a hotel that's a little bit out of the way, and it was late afternoon. I got myself a small beer in the sunshine it was last Monday. Last Monday, I think, Dave. And there's lots of people sitting around outside. And there's a guy and his wife just walking off going. And the guy just takes his cap off and sunglasses and said, "Are you Andy Leese?" And I said, "Yeah." And I looked at him, and it was a guy who I was in the same team in the sixth form college. So we haven't seen each other since we were 16, 17. That's a long time, Dave. And but we had a very, very successful team there, a really successful team at college with some very, very good players who went on and did okay for themselves. We were winners of all the kind of local, Staffordshire cup competitions that we were allowed to enter into, and then I then got involved playing on Saturdays and Sundays again with another good group of friends, and where we were in two very decent teams, and more so on a Sunday, Dave, than a Saturday. The Saturday stuff came a bit later as we got a bit older, But I continued to play and absolutely loved it. And when I went to university, but then I got to 2021 and I broke my leg playing football in university football, so it kind of hindered me quite a bit for a couple of years, Dave. I had quite a nasty leg break, and it set me back a little bit.
And it's amazing the amount of people that we've spoken to on the show with the same sort of link, that they go in and they're playing football and then they sort of picked up a really nasty injury. It's quite funny how many people you've actually spoken to doing this show. And I would say a good 60% of the people that we've probably spoken to have had that scenario where they actually had a good run and then all of a sudden they've had an injury. But I mean, how long did it take you to get over that, that sort of injury? And, was it a case of wanting to get back into football, or was it a bit of a...
No, because I was studying hard. So I was doing a degree up in Nottingham. I broke both bones, tibia and fibula, and I had a plate inserted with some metal pins, and it was quite a nasty break. And I didn't, at those days, Dave, I mean, rehabilitation, wasn't the kind of like it is now, and football wasn't my living, just a hobby. But I ended up meeting someone who, she was a physio and worked really hard with her to get my confidence back and get over it. But it was at least a couple of years, Dave, before I had the plate and pins taken out, and got myself back playing again, a little bit gingerly at the beginning. I remember turning out for the Sunday team that we had then. I distinctly remember taking the first couple of tackles and thinking, wow, getting up and thinking it's all right, it's actually survived. And I'm indebted as well to a guy called Chris Maskery who played for Stoke, and he was my brother's friend. And when I went back playing again, I'd come home from university, gone back to Stoke, and joined his he was running a very successful Sunday side. And why I'm grateful to him is he used to say to me, well, Andy, you're going to have to get fit, and do you want to come and get fit with me? Well, of course, his fitness level's been a professional at Stoke, and this is in the off season. Was anything like a 5 or 7 mile run around the local Trenton Park, as we call it, Trenton Gardens, at absolute breakneck speed, followed by lots of other short work that I'd never done. And what it meant, Dave, is I got fitter and sharper than I'd ever been in my life. And so, I wasn't getting in positions where you were getting tackled or having to make tackles, if you see what I mean, in terms of playing, So I'm indebted to Chris, really. He got me very, very fit, and it definitely helped me, my confidence getting back and playing again. So I continued to play whilst I was back in Stoke. I then decided to move south in the sort of mid-late 80s after I'd finished. I'd done a degree and then been to law school as well, and worked back in Stoke. Decided to move down south, and I didn't really settle, Dave, down here, and I continued to go back to Stoke and play on a Saturday in a decent level, but also on a Sunday as well. I mean, those were the days, when you could do both. Well, I don't know how well I did them, but you would try anyway. And, so I continued to do that until probably the early 90s, I guess. Yeah, I'd be about 30 years, and I was working in Potter's Bar, and one of the lads I was working with, chatting, and as you do, and he said he was playing at Potter's Bar Town, and I decided to go up there, and that was the first time I really settled and played football down south, as it were, and stopped travelling home to play. Potter's Bar then would be in, what would they be? They'd come out of the Hearts County, gone into the South Midlands then, I think. And that's really all I played down here, Dave. I probably played a better standard at home when I was going back to play than I did down here, but it was just kind of needs must a bit, when I decided to settle and play down south. But yeah, they were my sort of playing days through, I suppose about 5 years or so at Potter's Bar. I made about 240 odd appearances across I suppose that'd be like a 4 or 5 year spell. And I'd always kept that level of fitness, Dave. I mean, nothing like I am now. There'll be plenty of people smirking when they hear this, looking at the shape of me now. But I was incredibly fit. Didn't have the best ability, Dave. I was a wide right, wide left player, very, very quick. They used to have to open the gates for me at times, to come back in again. But I started to pick up injuries, and I probably wasn't looking after myself particularly well. I was living on my own at the time, and I started to pick up injuries, and that's when I decided at sort of 35, 1998, to sort of stop playing. Really, Potter's Bar had been in a couple of cup finals, and I remember coming on in both of them and pulling up again with a mixture of, I think, Achilles and calf injuries, and so just brought it to an end really, and decided to look on the other side of the fence with a little bit of coaching.
With your coaching, and back then, was it sort of going and doing some of your coaching badges and stuff like that? I mean, was you doing them, or was it just a matter of just sort of like learning on the job type thing that you see some managers start off with? And whereabouts did you start off with your coaching side?
Well, it was really at Potter's Bar. I'd been very fortunate to have three guys who now are all sadly deceased. A guy called John Harding came in to manage in my second or third year, was it, at Potter's Bar? And John was an A licensed coach, and didn't see eye to eye to begin with. I was one of the older players, and I kept getting nudged out of the group. And but he opened my eyes to, I think, coaching that I'd probably had as a player at different times in my career, especially when I suppose when I played, representative football, maybe county level football. But it had never really registered with me. But he opened my eyes a bit, and then Ray Kirstensen and Mickey Darling came in to run the side from Boreham Wood, and they were a revelation. I mean, they had a way of playing and a completely different take on football. I mean, just for example, just playing a 3-5-2 system, totally not unheard of throughout the rest of Europe. But I mean, I think in what you'd call English football, and these two guys were just passionate about it, and passionate about passing the ball and how they wanted to play. And it just got me. It was Mickey Darling, who was, I say, sadly passed away. Mick, he'd been a player at Chesham, and I think at the old Enfield, and his brother, who was at Potter's Bar, Paul Darling. But Mickey was a massive influence on me and the way I thought about the game, and he encouraged me. Well, he actually got me involved, because what happened is I ended up having a fallout with Ray Kirstensen, who ran the team. I cannot remember for why. I always had plenty to say, Dave. You can imagine, can't you? I always had plenty to say myself. And I walked in one Saturday, and I've been dropped to the reserves at Potter's Bar, and to play. And Ray was the first guy I saw walking in. "Hello, Andy." He said, "You're in charge today." And I said, "What do you mean I'm in charge, Ray?" He said, and I'll try and keep the French to a minimum. He said, I sacked that so and so manager in the reserves last night. He said, "So you're in charge today?" And I said, "I don't want to do that, Ray. I want to play." So he calls Mickey Darling over. He says, "Mick, Andy doesn't want to do the job." He said, "So I'm just about to tell him he can go as well. He can leave as well." And I said, "What? If I don't take the team and manage it today and play and manage, I'm getting a sack." He went, "Yeah, you're gone as well." I said, "All right, I'll give it a go then." So I went off, Steve, with no experience. Went up to Biggleswade, the old Biggleswade town. I remember it. I don't know if you ever went to their ground, did you?
No.
Where they got changed in like a cricket pavilion. It was like going in somebody's front room. It was carpeted and all sorts. And so I set the team up. God knows how. When I look back, I played. Don't think I subbed myself. Played the full 90 minutes. Ran the team. We won 2-1. Got back, and I didn't dare look Ray in the eye because I thought he could be quite a fearsome character. And all I remember is standing in the corner of the bar at Potter's Bar with Mickey Darling, what seemed like 2 or 3 hours. And Mick eventually convinced me that with a bit of coaching, a little bit of go and get a bit of qualification, and that I could do the job. And I sort of stayed. That's how I came to be in football management. But I went off and that's when Howard Wilkinson just launched the new blueprint for coaching in the FA. It was 1998, and I took myself off, Dave, and did the level 1, level 2, and onto the level 3, the UEFA B license. And I absolutely loved it. I always say I don't think it's for everyone going the other side of the fence, as it were, but I absolutely loved it. I pulled a team together at Potter's Bar of youth players and 1 or 2 senior players who'd fallen out of favour. And I absolutely loved it. And we went into a division called a league called the Essex and Hearts Border. And I'm pretty sure Harlow were in it, Dave, but they were the days of the old Enfield, Dagenham and Redbridge, Canvey Island. Well, nobody had ever heard of Potter's Bar.
Yeah.
They're having to look on the maps to see where it was. and I was rocking up with a team playing these non-league bloody heavyweights, and we.
So you saying, you was in the league, and apologies, we had a little breakdown with the Wi-Fi, but I mean, you were saying, about these, playing these non-league heavyweights.
Yeah, and it was little old Potter's Bar, and we did incredibly well for ourselves. It was split into an East and a West division, and I think we finished. It was a year when they decided to create a new Premier division, and we finished 6th, I think, in what would have been the Western division, I guess then. And I'm pretty sure I remember going to Harlow, Dave. When they had the running track, and
yeah,
I'm sure they were in it then. And we went in this new Premier division, and say it was something that Ray Kirsten and Mickey Darling had wanted. The theory that we would progress, develop players a lot quicker, playing a better standard, than your standard kind of reserve leagues that South Midlands Reserve League, for example. So yeah, I mean it made me, but it nearly broke me as well. I had a fantastic help from. Well, you're basically on your own as reserve manager, but I had fantastic help from 2 guys, Bob Brassett, who was a poor old soul, Bob. I do see him from time to time. Very difficult eyesight condition he had, but he used to do all the admin admirably. And another guy, Tony Mills, who's since passed away, used to help me out doing the physio, such as it was. But say it made me, but it nearly broke me as well. I remember going to Saffron Walden, and it might have been I think it was the end or the beginning of a season, Dave, and I had stopped playing, but we had 11 players, including me, and I had to start the game, and I'm doing the team sheet, I'm laying the kit out, I'm making sure the physio stuff's there, I'm blowing the balls up, and then I'm having to play as well, and I'm thinking, this can't be right. Anyway, long story short, I remember drawing 1 each, coming back with Bob, Saffron Walden back to Potter's Bar, a bit of a jaunt. I'm pretty sure we would have had to drop a couple of lads off on the way, probably midnight when we got back, and I said to Bob, he used to open up the clubhouse, put the kit in, and then he'd either wait for me or he lived in Enfield, he'd have to get a late bus or whatever, find his way home. Anyway, I said, Bob, I can't do this anymore. Cannot do, And we'd had a few weeks like that, as I recall, where I say, Dave, you were doing absolutely everything. The football was the last of your concerns, and having to play as well just to get a team out. And I accepted that. As a reserve team manager, you're always getting players taken from you for first team duties and all that. So, but we sat there. I do remember that conversation, and that was been, gosh, that's got to be 25 years ago now. And he convinced me that he said I had something about me, and that he thought I could do it, and players responded to me and everything else. And anyway, I cracked on doing it, and I suppose the rest is history, Dave. I used to stand in. There were a couple of changes of management at first team at Potters Bar. I wasn't particularly not say well liked there at the time, but there was a group of people running it, and some of the senior players who perhaps had a bit of a mistrust of me always thought I wanted the first team job, which I guess looking back deep down, I probably did, but I never made it obvious. But I was always willing to step in, and because I'd gone and done coaching licenses, my coaching was way ahead of anybody else that was there, within the club. So, and I made a bit of I suppose, forged a bit of a name for myself. But when I didn't get the job, after the first team job, I did ask after a couple of years if I could be considered. I can't remember how it fell now, but I know Steve Smart was there at the time. Maybe Steve Smart got the job, but I ended up looking elsewhere, and I got a chance at Somerset Ambry, which is now Broxbourne Borough. That is, Dave Bidwell was the chairman there. They'd come out of the Hearts County League, and they'd gone in the South Midlands and fallen spectacularly flat on the backsides, and couldn't get the commitment. But they didn't get relegated out of the Premier Division. There was nobody with floodlights, as I recall. So I ended up going in there, Dave, in 2000, and took most of the Potters Bar sort of reserve team boys with me.
And when you did that, you go into there, and you go in sort of, I will call it Broxbourne as it in there. But how was that going in? Was that literally going in as sort of like literally as first team manager?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. I said they'd fallen flat on the backsides, Dave. They'd gone up the year before in the Hearts County League with some very decent players, but I think they misunderstood the the commitment levels, the ins and outs, what's required. And so it was still a bit of a, and I'm sure they won't mind me saying this, then I know they're not an active club at the moment, are they? But it was a social club, really, and a drinking club with a bit of football tagged on. So it wasn't really about football, and I went in and tried to change it. But yeah, I was first team manager. Dave Bidwell gave me a few quid every week, which wasn't a lot, to try and help out if we needed to help anybody out, and managed to gather some very, very good players together. And we had a fantastic couple of seasons. First season, we, I think, finished 5th, and then there'd be at least 22, maybe 24 teams in the division. We had a half-decent FA Cup run, got absolutely whacked at Canvey Island, who were top of the Isthmian Premier then, under Jeff King, with virtually, they were part-time, full-time. And I remember going there with the wagons circle, Dave, and we'd had a couple of good wins, and it was the first time Somerset Ambry had ever done anything like that. We went to Canvey, circled the wagons, and it was 5-0 on about 85 minutes. I thought, wow, we've got out of this with all right, we've got a bit of prize money. We'll get some of the money from the crowd today and everything else. And then they threw a fella on called Lee Boylan, who was the marksman of his era, who was rattling in 40 goals a season at Canvey. And 85 minutes came on. My lads were absolutely out on the feet, and he rattled a hat trick in about 3 minutes. He went from 5, 6, 7, 8, and I am now pleading with the officials for the game to be over, And then I think I think it went 9 in the end. So I think we really got our backsides smacked that day. But it in the scheme of what we'd achieved and what we'd done, it wasn't a bad thing. There's some players there that grew and developed and stayed with me for a long time, and we found the likes of Steve Wales playing local football, and Steve Wales went on to have a very decent career with me, and with other clubs. But yeah, we had some good times there.
So how long was you at Boxball? For how many seasons?
Just 2 seasons. The second season got a little bit fraught, Dave. It was the commitment dropped off. I'd signed some decent players out of as I recall, out of the South Midlands League. People like Jeff Cross, who'd been at Hoddesdon for a long time. I got Jeff in, but commitment started to wane, but we were still top. I don't know, top 6, top 8, maybe. So from where they'd started, we'd established ourselves as a real decent team. And then I took a phone call from Vinny Sartori, who was then the chairman at Chesham, and that started the sort of next chapter of my career, really.
He went from there to Chesham. What was that like?
Yeah, so that was well, I say it started the next chapter. It nearly didn't start. They remember going and getting interviewed, and I'd hooked up with John Meeks, who I then went to spend most of my management career working with. And as I recall, they'd offered, the club was going through a tough time. They'd had the tragic accident of players going to a game. I don't know if you ever remember it, Dave, of Troy Townsend's son, Curtis Townsend. That's Andros Townsend's brother, who was killed. There was 4 players going to a game at Barton Rovers, as I recall, and they had a hell of a nasty smash, and Curtis lost his life. And so Troy was in charge then, and I was told they'd agreed terms with somebody else. But I remember going to there was the owner then, Paul Phillips, went to his house, got interviewed, John and I. And they really liked us and what we had to say, and gave us the job. But we took a whole load of stick, because I'm not sure they told Troy Townsend fully what was happening. Although Troy was away from the club, obviously, with the death of his son. But then, Dave, back in the day, so this is 21 years ago, they were in Ryman Division 2 when there was Premier. It was just Ryman Premier, then there was 1, 2 and 3. And you had ground grading, as you do now, but you had ground grading at the end of the season. I took the job on a Wednesday. On the Thursday morning, the ground graders came to look at the ground, and because of all that had gone on with the Curtis Townsend incident, they hadn't got around to doing some of the work, so they were basically demoted on ground grading there and then. So I'd gone from thinking I was taking over a Ryman 2 club on a Wednesday night, and by the Thursday morning I was running a Ryman 3 club. So it nearly didn't happen, but it all smoothed itself out. It was damned hard work going in. There was a group of very talented players, if a little bit wayward in terms of discipline and organisation, and a little bit of come day go day, couldn't care less. I'll be there when I'm there, sort of thing. And I between John and I, we reorganised and brought a few old heads in that we knew, got a set of rules around the place. And again, the rest is history. We kicked the season off in August. We didn't lose a game until Boxing Day. I think we were 12 straight wins. I think we were 36 points out of 36. We had cup runs galore. And the whole spell there was like that. I had 3 years of just back-to-back success, back-to-back promotions, Ryman 3 to Ryman 2, Ryman 1, sorry. Ryman 1. Let me think. It was back-to-back promotions. They might have collapsed at that year when they did the Conference South and Conference North, when they set up the National Leagues, I think. But we went then straight into the Ryman Premier and the second promotion. And boy, were we punching above our weight. The facilities and the ground at Chesham were just not good, But we just had a hell of a roller coaster of a ride for 3 seasons. It was just breathtaking. And that kind of made me, well, John and I as a management team, really. In that spell there, Dave. So
was that So when he was at Chesham, was that you know a decision then to move on from there, or was that
Uh,
decision made for you, shall we say?
no, no, David. It is the only regret I will ever have in football. Um, we we'd been touted and poached by two or three clubs. I won't name them because there's still people around who would know. But you know, we had a chance to move on a couple of times. I think we got back-to-back promotions. We were playing a brand of football that was really exciting. You know, we were playing a 3-5-2 system. We had the best wing backs around, and you know, our players were in demand as well. But we were just, yeah, we were outstanding, Dave, for two and a half seasons, and turned down some offers to go. But then, right towards the end of the third season, there were a few issues, and again, I won't, Dave, just in the interest of kind of respect for the individuals still around, but sort of got told that the budget was going to be cut, that some of the funding that we'd had wasn't going to be there. And the way they handled it was absolutely appalling. You know, I got a knock on the door during a team talk and got handed a letter to tell me that the budget was being cut, you know, just before an FA Trophy game. And it wasn't good. And why I regret it is that, you know, I then took one of the offers that we'd sort of had to go to Boreham Wood. And why I regret it is I shouldn't have done it at the time, but I think just you know, you mature, don't you? You change, and I was just so angry with what was going on at the time, and that the whole thing we'd built was being blown up, you know, through no fault of our own, and it just yeah, it just got to me, and it was sad, and I walked away with John and most of the players almost overnight, and we left Cheshunt in a, you know, in a real predicament, you know, in a big hole, which on reflection, and I have said this publicly and privately to whoever's interested, whoever wanted to know, you know, shouldn't have done it that way, Dave, but at the time it felt like the right thing to do, and then Boreham Wood wasn't the right move. It was the wrong timing. They were struggling. Ian Allinson had left there. I had about 12 games to try and get them in the playoffs, which we nearly did. But then the chairman and owner there took a dislike to us as well. Very, very quickly kept the best of the players we'd taken over there, and then dispensed with our services. So, you know, on reflection, Dave, it wasn't the best thing we'd ever done.
So from there, where did we go from Boreham Wood?
Kicked around a little bit, went to help Gordon Bartlett out at Wealdstone, snapped my Achilles playing a bit of veterans football, which hindered my mobility, you know, driving and, you know, physically getting around. Went to help Gordon over there for a few months, but that wasn't, you know, it was less than ideal, wasn't really what I wanted to do, and not what John was with me. And we got a call to go back to Potters Bar. John had managed the first team at Potters Bar when I'd been reserve manager in the late 90s, but this was now 2006, and got a call in the February. They'd gone in the Southern League Central Division, I think, and they were rock bottom, cut adrift. They'd gone up, all gone horribly wrong, and looked like they were going straight back down again. John and I went in the February. I remember there were 42 points to play for. We picked up probably 30 of those points, Dave. It was an incredible time. We called a few favours in, players we knew, galvanised the ones who were there, changed the whole culture mentality around the place with, you know, about 500 quid a week budget, and managed to keep them up. So yeah, we had a bit of fun doing that, and stayed another season. Had what was then the best FA Cup run, nearly made the first round proper. Finished, I think, I don't know where he finished near the top, but they cut what bit of the budget was, again, had been cut, and I'd already had a call from somebody I knew at Chesham United to go over there. So that was probably April, May 2007, and you know, Chesham was a totally different prospect, you know, bigger club and more established, and yeah, John and I took the opportunity to go over there.
Of course, over to Chesham. Was that Southern League at the time?
Yes, it was. Yeah, yeah, it was. Well, we walked in and they'd gone down. Luther Blissett had been in charge, and they were in the. They got put into the Southern League, what was then a Midlands division. Well, I come from the Midlands, Dave, but it took me a week to understand the geography of where some of these teams. Honestly, it was as far flung as Woodford Town, and as far. I was almost home. It was in Willenhall, which is South Staffordshire. It was one heck of a league that I walked into again, and but we had a fantastic setup there. The chairman was very supportive. He was new to it as well. We set about a business.
Was that Peter?
No, Charles Manchester.
Right.
Yeah, he was the chairman at the time. Local supporter, businessman. Backed the club, and yeah, I think we were in the playoffs the first year we were there. Lost at Nuneaton. Second year, I think we went up. We won the playoff final. We beat Slough 4-0 and got ourselves back into what was then, as you know, there was just the one Southern Premier League then, wasn't there? So yeah, had some absolutely, I wouldn't know where to start with Chesham. I mean, 10 seasons was pretty unique, 550 games in charge. And we did absolutely well. I say did everything that we set out to do, I guess, apart from getting to step 2. But I don't think that was ever really a possibility until the last couple of seasons that we were there, and it only then because we'd had FA Cup runs that were, just kind of mind-boggling. We had 2 runs. We went the second round proper, and then the following year, first round proper. But the best probably. The best times of my football life, I don't know, Dave. I probably won't know till I stop doing it, will I? But I mean, the FA Cup runs have to stand out. But year in, year out, we were a top 5 side in the Southern Premier. We were incredibly well regarded. We had a couple of 2-3 rebuilds of teams in there as well. And remarkably, the FA Cup run when we got to the second round proper came with probably what we thought was the weakest, or not the strongest team we'd had.
Who did you get to play in that?
Fantastic times. What the first run we had was 2015. Yeah. I mean, we got through the various rounds, early rounds, Aylesbury, Northley, and then we beat Enfield Town in the last qualifying round. We beat them 2-1. There was an absolutely huge crowd at Chesham. I'd been to watch Enfield Town at Hitchin in the round before, saw them come through a replay, but we were superb on the day. 2-1 in the end. I have gone on record, so they should have had a penalty at the end, but hey ho, it didn't get given. And we got drawn away to Bristol Rovers.
Oh wow!
Yeah, who were then League 2, just come out of the conference. Went down in their backyard on a Sunday afternoon in front of about 7,500, 8,000 people, and beat them with a 1-0 77th minute winner. I'll never forget that. Ryan Blake. Blake is at Berkhamsted at the moment, but shot on the run. But we were so well prepared. Fantastic day, the sort of thing, preparation, the build up that you never forget. And then we went to Bradford City. Bradford at the time were 5th in League 1, and had in their team probably 4 or 5 loan players from Premier League clubs. So totally different proposition. They were playing off one touch. We couldn't get near them. But we went to Valley Parade again on a Sunday afternoon. We kept agreeing with the BBC to swap the game over to the Sunday afternoon. You got another, I don't know, let's say you got another 15, 20 grand in your back pocket just for agreeing to be on the long highlights on a Sunday. So we did that again. Lost 4-0, 2-0 at 90 minutes, and I opened us up with nothing left to play for, and we conceded 2 goals right at the death. But fantastic memories. And the following year, did the trick again, beat Potter's Bar in the last qualifying round, and went to Peterborough and lost 2-1 in the first round proper. And very, very tight game. Very tight game. Probably a game we deserve to have another crack at. But
was that Ferguson in charge then?
No, Grant McCann.
Right.
Grant McCann was there. So two fantastic years in what was 10 fantastic years. You know, we regularly outperformed expectation, outperformed the budget. You know, and honestly, there's some memories and some of the best times and some of the best stories of my career happened over there. You know, and some tragedy as well. We lost Ryan Moran, who passed away, you know, way too early with cancer when he was playing for us. You know, and yeah, he was part of one of my favourite stories when I used to come in and training nights. If we were preparing for big games, we'd go on the pitch, so we'd change in the home dressing room, and then John and I had used the officials' dressing room. So usually, inevitably, you'd come out after work, and I'll go back on this particular night and go back to get my kit. I can't find any of my clothes. I start to look around, and I'm sort of vertically challenged, as you know, Dave, at 5'7" or whatever I am. I've now got clothes hanging off the high pipes in the building. There's no way I can reach, but I can't find what I then thought was a very expensive suit and shirt and tie, and I hunting high and low. And I remember Ryan Moran going out the building with Adam Parker, laughing their heads off, and a whole bunch of them, and clearly they know what's going on. And I've marched up and down this corridor, Dave. I've tried every nook and cranny. And then, totally oblivious to me, they've left the door open to the pitch. And for about 3 weeks, for some unknown reason, there's been a tailor's dummy sat in the showers. And right in the middle of the pitch at 10 o'clock at night with the floodlights on, is a tailor's dummy stuck right in the centre circle, neatly dressed in all my clothes, my suit and shirt and tie. Even my shoes are out there. You know, the kind of things that players get up to. It's but things like that, you know, just fabulous kind of. Yeah, the best of times there, and it didn't end particularly well. You know, there were a number of things that went on behind the scenes, and that year after the Peterborough game, and there were different people getting involved, and a new owner, and they always felt that, you know, we should be pushing harder than we were, and I'd accepted that when we didn't have an FA Cup run. I mean, I think that season, Dave, when we got to the second round proper, I think we played 63 games. You know, you can't expect a squad of players. You know, I'd need 2 players for every position. You know? And so in that second season, it got it got a little bit it got a little bit fraught, and and there were a number of us who, perhaps in hindsight, you know, I was going through a few personal issues, perhaps didn't get on as well as we should have done, you know, and it didn't come crashing down. It was I suppose, a fairly amicable parting of the ways. I'm just a little bit disappointed they didn't let me stay to the end of the season. I think it was like the end of March or something, but you know, they wanted to start afresh, and John Meeks, who'd worked with me, stayed on, and they gave it a go. But listen, it's football. It's things happen, don't they? And I wasn't out of work long before I picked up the Enfield Town job. So,
yeah. So how did that come about? And was that just another something that happened there, and manager's position free, and then and sort of applying, and away we go again?
Yeah, I think so. From memory, I was doing a bit of work. I was gone scouting around for Rod Stringer, who was a good mate of mine. He was at Chelmsford. They were in the Conference South playoffs. So been doing a bit of work for Rod and Steve Pitt, and I was enjoying that and watching a different level of football. And I can't remember if anything else. Yeah, I think there were 2 or 3 roles at the time. Actually, I do remember now. And but yeah, applied to Enfield, spoke to them, and yeah, that all happened very quickly. I think that was kind of about May 2017. So yeah, and the rest is history there, Dave. I guess you know the story there, don't you? You know, I walked in, and previous manager had cleared out virtually every single player bar 2, one who was injured, and Mickey Parcell, and we set about rebuilding. You know, which we did in the first year, and made an okay kind of job of it, really. You know, we were clutching at straws a little bit to get players in, but we did it in the end. We had a great FA Cup run, nearly got through to the first round proper, Probably finished about halfway up the league, which is probably where we deserve to be. But yeah, it was a tough gig that, because I've gone into a different league, different geography, different territory for players, you know.
How difficult is that when you go into a different, like you've done now, I suppose, in a way, but how difficult is that when you go into a different league, different area to try and pick players up? Because some players are not going to be able to go, travel, in the Isthmian territory, shall we say, and the others are going to travel in Southern territory. So, I mean, how difficult is that to sort of, you go into Enfield, how difficult is that to put, a team together?
It's very difficult, and I'm finding it very difficult now with Kettering. I've gone into another area where it's not my comfort zone. Whilst I have plenty of contacts and know a few players, it's proving a real challenge right now. And it did at the time at Enfield. You're having to look, whereas at Chesham I'd been looking more locally, I guess, around Buckinghamshire, Bedfordshire. Suddenly with the Isthmian, you're looking further afield. And it stayed like that pretty much in all my time there. But I find once you're able to pull one or two players in, maybe from different regions, players kind of know players, and you're able to work it out in the end. And travel's not like it used to be, Dave, is it? It's everywhere's sort of gettable, isn't it? But yeah, it is a challenge. It is. You've got to know your players, know your geography.
So what was your best for you? What would you say was your best season at at Enfield?
I guess I'd have to say the penultimate one. Where we finished third. Yeah, why would I say that? Probably just in terms of the consistency and the strength of the squad that we had. But every season had its, had something in it. The year we won the League Cup, and when we were kind of hit by COVID, we were still going well, Dave, in the league. Every season's enjoyable. I wouldn't be doing, but memorable was probably the one before last, and yeah, I mean, you were there, you witnessed most of, well, you saw some of it, didn't you? But the fact we didn't quite make it in the end will always stay with me.
Was it? I mean that last season, was it as well? I mean, it was such a, how can you put it? It was almost like somebody had, right at the very end, had sort of come along and just sort of pulled your pants down and kicked you into where's, wasn't it? I mean, right, Eric finished in that playoff semi-final, because it was one of those ones where it felt like we only got to hang on for a couple more minutes, and all of a sudden it was a nightmare.
And as a manager, you tend to know, or you do know, when things need changing. Sometimes, you don't always get it right. Far from it, you hesitate. You see something else happen with a player, or you have a 5-minute spell where things are looking better and are going to plan. You don't change. But that was a game where I felt it 2-1. Even with, they made that change with Sam Higgins coming on, and he hadn't, as prolific as he is, he hadn't been in the best of form. He hadn't been playing a lot of football, and I didn't get concerned, and we didn't change the shape of what we were doing or the personnel. With 3 minutes left on the clock, we genuinely thought, and I did, that we would see it out. And the only complaint I had, we were prone to, we were an attack-minded unit with Mo in the side, and that night we had Cass playing and Kunz, but we had the likes of Percy, PK, Sam Young's, players who want to get on. And when I look back at it, there's a little spell where you see, I think it's Sam and PK both going beyond the ball, trying to support the front three, and we're in this winning position. And I'm not going to have it as a regret, because at the time you react to what you're seeing and feeling. On reflection, we should have just stopped that. We should have just sat in. We should have put another defender on. Should have kept what we got, or maybe another a defensive-minded midfield player, and stopped having kind of a front five and a back five. Because in the end, that's how they break for the final goal. I think it comes on a break like that, where I think the ball rolls. I don't know if he hits the post, comes back in Joe Wright's arms, and he clears it very quickly. And we're not in shape, or we're out of shape basically. So yeah, Yeah, Dave, your instinct at the time tells you things are okay, and we thought they were. And it was as big a shock to me as it was to everybody else in the ground, Home and away supporters, must have been a surprise to everybody. So there you go.
So Enfield came to an end, sort of, as you said, in April. Now into, now at Kettering. How difficult is it? I mean, I saw your interview with a gentleman from the local paper and the radio station and stuff, and saw some of your questions. How difficult now is it to find, have you found your number two? Have you found your team, your team? Other than a playing squad.
I think I have, but only this week. Yeah, I think I'm in a position later this week to probably announce that. Yeah, managed to pull a couple of things together. Probably still need some more support on the ground locally, but I've been to a meeting today with the club where I think that will be available to me. So yeah, hopefully I have. Kiri Nicholas, who was goalkeeping coach at Enfield, he's gonna come with me, which is great news. He's going to follow me, which is fantastic. Kiri, great guy, does a lot more than just the goalkeeping coaching. He's a knowledgeable coach outside of the goalkeepers, and but hopefully with somebody else as well agreed. So yes, Dave. Yeah, things are moving as quickly as they can, but it's a whirlwind. I'm not off the phone any time of the day or night at the moment, and tracking down the squad has been a challenge. A number of the players are away. They're players that I don't know. I don't know them as individuals, as characters. I don't know them as players. So I'm having to take references on them from anyone and everyone that I know and trust. Then I'm meeting with prospective new players. Then I'm meeting with the club sort of in general. They've got a very well-established academy and community trust set up as well. So and we've had a couple of players we've got most players on contract, which is an unusual one for me to handle. Some of those players don't want to stay, so we've been busy selling one of them yesterday, and probably another one to move on as well. So it's all go, Dave. Yeah, and I've got to, I assured the club that I knew my stuff as far as the league they were in, which I do. I feel comfortable with the league we're going in, and I know a lot of the clubs, and I know the managers, and I know how they operate and how they set up and everything else. But it's actually the players getting the players right is going to be my biggest challenge. But I guess not many people make the moves I have, across the leagues like that at the same level. But I view it as a really, really big challenge. Great club, fantastic history. I won't say it's fallen on hard times. It's in a new era with a new ownership structure, and I want to be the guy who can, kind of galvanise the playing side and bring them some more success if I can.
So are you going into, is it the Summer League Premier Central, or is it the Summer League Central?
Yeah.
So up against the likes of Bromsgrove, Needham, St Ives. I mean, I'm just reading them from last year. I know it could have changed slightly, and I know some of them have moved left and right and all over the place. But Royston, Stratford, Stourbridge, Alberchurch, and Redditch, and Ilkeston. Well, no, Ilkeston have gone to the north, but Michelova as well, and in the likes of Leicester that just missed out. Colville will be, I'm assuming, under Adam Stevens will be flying again this year. And of course, Nuneaton Borough as well, the Jimmy as well. So it's a tough old league, that one as well.
Yeah, and don't forget the teams who've come down in Leamington and AFC Telford. Two big established clubs in their own right as well. So it's going to be interesting.
We said last season it was probably the strongest Step 3 league of them all, because of quite a few of them went quite a distance in the FA Cup, quite a distance in the FA Trophy last year. So so it was one of those things where you thought, well, it's probably a little bit stronger than the Isthmian, but speaking out of turn, I think there's going to be a lot this year to beat that Isthmian league this year, because I think it looks quite strong to say.
Yeah, it does to me. Yeah, it does to me as well. But they've all got a lot to commend themselves for, haven't they? But it's a new one for me. But I know the geography. I know where we're going and what we're going into. But yeah, I've got a big job on my hands, Dave. Between now and, I won't say pre-season, but between now and the start of the season, we're not going to be perfect, but we'll be close. We'll be okay.
What will be your local derby?
That's a very good question. Who's nearest? It's not Bedford anymore because they dropped out, didn't they? Gosh, Dave, I don't know. Looking across the
Bromsgrove?
No,
I'm not too sure whereabouts you are. So it's doing with Stourbridge, Redditch, Mickleover.
No, Mickleover's further north.
It won't be
I'd have to
Leaston. I need a market at least.
Yeah, there won't be one of those. Won't be one of those. But yeah, it must be one of those Southern Midlands teams that would be classed as, I suppose the best you're going to get for a derby anyway. I mean, in terms of geography, it'd be like Corby, but because they're in the level below, aren't they?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's fascinating times, Dave, and I say I'm going to give it everything I've got to try and make sure we bring a little bit of success back, however that may look, whatever that shows itself as. So,
well, a massive thank you for joining us. I've really enjoyed our hour together, as I always did every single Sunday for the last season and a half. And of course, I'll miss that this season because unless we can do a deal with Kettering to get you to come on a Sunday night, he's thinking, no, don't do that, Dave. But no, in all fairness, it's been fantastic. Of course, we'll be keeping an eye on. Of course, I'll keep in touch without a doubt. But a massive thank you for coming on again tonight, and wish you and Kettering and your team all the very, very best for the rest of for the new season.
Much appreciated, Dave. Yeah, let's keep in touch and see where we can touch base.
Absolutely. And of course, we'll be back with another episode of My Life in Football. We've got a few more lined up for you that you'll be really pleased to have a look at and have a laugh at some of the stories going on. But a massive thank you for watching tonight from me and from Andy. And until next time, good night.